All right, guys, so let's get right into this one. So I did this one about a year ago, but I'm going to switch it up a little bit. So this is the difficult karmic placements in a natal chart. So let's get started with Moon conjunct Pluto, especially if it is in a water sign like Scorpio. So Moon conjunct Pluto is very, very karmic in the sense that people who have this often are the breakers of a generational curse. They are the person in their family who has gone through something very traumatic, whether it's psychological, physical, whatever. Depending, there's a lot of different factors that play into that, and there's tends to be this cycle in their bloodline, and they are either going to continue to try to control, to continue to try to resist, play victim, kind of play into the low energy of that, or they're going to completely go into the higher energy of Pluto and transform psychologically, right? So oftentimes here, the emotional body is fused with that deep psychological trauma. And, that inheritance has been passed on, like I said, generation, generation, generation. This is also known as a Hades moon. So that could also extend to like the square, the opposition. And there's this feeling of real heaviness when growing up. There's this feeling of real having to have grown up very, very fast, right? And people with this, they have this like built-in, they're natural psychologists, right? They have this built-in understanding of the darker side of humanity, the darker side of how humans can be. And because of that, a lot of times, because they grow up early, they need to kind of go through this period in their life where they almost learn to become kids again, learn to become childish. They a lot of times have to be, sometimes people with this, they have, parents. I don't like to do like the moon as a mother thing, but they could have had parents who were very, very, very just hawking all over them. Strict is more Saturn, just obsessed with their life, nosy, projecting a lot of. I know several people where it's like the mom loves them, but just projects so much of her own OCD and fears and things like that onto the kid, right? Oh, call me when you're there. Oh my God! And they're just so scared. They almost put those fears into the kid. So what can happen is that the person, and then also Pluto conjunct Scorpio on a psychological karmic level too, personally, is related to you in this lifetime having chose to deal with your own karmic shadow, right? Like a lot of the fears that you've brought in from past lives into this life will be very, very connected to your psyche and to what you need in order to feel safe, to feel happy. So there's people with that, it's very karmic because it requires a lot of work. People who have Moon conjunct Pluto can't just kind of chill and live like the easy life. They have to go, whether it's therapy, whether it's something of that nature where the soul is understanding itself better. They have this fascination with understanding the soul, and if they don't, they can really suffer because of the emotional ups and downs that can bring, and also the karmic circumstances that often brings, right? So yeah, so power dynamics, survival, and just so many themes play into this, and the goal is to rise above it. It's really just it's a lot of times people with this, they have some deep emotional crisis, that whether it's from this life or a previous one or from both, right? A lot of times it's like you have past life trauma that gets reignited in this life, so you can deal with it. So they have that, and they're here to kind of learn to allow that and learn to go through the death rebirth transformation process with that, which is a lot easier said than done. And yeah, I mean, if you do go into like the whole mother thing, I guess for this one, I do see a lot with the mother. Yeah, it can be very controlling. That was where I was looking for. Very controlling, very intense, emotionally all over the place. So sometimes that mother or the bloodline, whatever, will throw its own trauma onto the kid. And when it comes to trust issues, if they have the experience of being manipulated emotionally by people that are supposed to take care of them, how are they supposed to be good with other people? And there's also the theme of emotional abandonment, right? This is common with this too. So because of that, they're so aware of other people's emotional motives that it can also it can become like paranoia, but then it's justified based on their experience. So letting people in can be really, really difficult. But yeah, the goal is to transform the emotional body, right, through the conscious type of shadow work, and to really break these ancestral karmic loops is what they really are. So yeah. Okay, so what I would say next is someone who, let me just write down the time. Someone who has a lot of 12th or 8th house placements. So what do I mean by this? Well, if you have a lot going on in one of those two, either of those two houses, well, actually, let's say 8th, 12th, and 4th, the water houses. Basically, especially with the 4th house, it's more so on the IC, at the bottom of the chart, on that angle. But, especially with the 8th and the 12th, the 8th, someone with a lot of 8th house placements, it gives the energy of Scorpio, Pluto. And there's just a lot that you can't unsee, right? There's a lot that you go into this life to transform, to have experiences that propel you into a different version of yourself, right? Like I said this in the video I just recorded before this, that 8th house people are people who have lived many, many different lifetimes within this one life. So having that there, it doesn't really coincide so well with this very Capricornian, if you want to call it that, reality. And one second, let me check something. Yeah, so a lot of 8th house energy is hidden. It's about going beneath the surface. It's about, challenging. I wouldn't say challenging norms. It's just that 8th house people are going to be interested in things that other people aren't going to be interested in, right? Now, they are sometimes just misunderstood. Sometimes, not just because they can be looked at, oh, they're too intense or this or that. But there's a lot of crises and transformation that help shape them and help them evolve and help their soul evolve, regardless of what planets we're talking about here. Now, the 8th house is also about trust and vulnerability. So that's another theme where that could have been broken in past lives, betrayal and whatnot. And there's this soul journey to learn to let oneself go, and to not be so paranoid, to not be so so stuck to the negative potential of what something could be. I think that people who have a lot of 8th house, 12th house, 4th house placements are bound a lot by karma, because they have specifically chosen to engage with their emotional, spiritual, with their emotional bodies and with growing spiritually in this lifetime. And that process is not always pretty. So the reason it's karmic is because karma is related to, the connection between past lives and this life and the soul growth. Everything is truly karmic in its essence, but it's difficult because in this reality, a lot of people have much trouble with letting go, with surrendering to God, to the universe. And, especially when we talk about 12th house, right, where past lives, the subconscious fears and isolation and the dissolution of the ego, right? Disillusionment of the ego, like these all come into play. And people here can feel like aliens where they need so much space, they're so sensitive to energy, and their lives can be so chaotic because 12th house is about service ultimately. It's about feeling that connection with oneness. So you have certain people with 12th house energies who are here for very specific reasons. I always think of this example of someone I know who, their life was complete chaos, 12th house or to the max. And then once they started completely tying their life to spirituality and real spirituality, everything became very calm. So it's almost like the astrology of fate, how different placements like that kind of push you into a certain way of existing, because 12th house can be very self-sabotagey. Right? Lots of unclarity, lack of clarity around life direction, around identity. A lot is hidden, a lot is done, behind closed doors, and there's a need. There's lots of gifts, of course. I'm not even getting into the gifts of these, but there can be like a repression as well, if you know what I mean. So a Venus in the 12th house, for example, can be someone who might feel unworthy of being loved. And because of that, they might go for more hidden or idealized type of love, right? Or be attracted to unavailable people. Mars in the 12th could be like some type of repressed anger, and the anger gets turned inward, then that leads to like the self-sabotage. And, a lot of 12th house people carry a lot of karmic guilt. And sometimes it's really not connected to them, and the best thing they can do is find a way in their life that they can give back. IC placements are very much very, very karmic too. They're there for a reason. Notably, having I'll probably go into some of these. I'll probably go into some of these independently. So let's just say that these will show up in our life. There is that ancestral link, that link to our deep psychological self, right? That link to who our childhood and kind of what makes us, what forms us. Pluto and the IC, you become someone who goes through a lot of darkness when you're growing up. You become someone who your idea of what's normal, what's regular as a kid is Plutonian energy, is this potentially dark energy. Saturn, and a lot of it has to do with the household, with the parents, with with kind of how the feeling of the internal home within yourself is formed. So if you don't overcome that, then it affects your career or your dharma and your greater purpose. Anyways, I'll go into those more later. But yeah. So next, and sorry guys, I have to write the time. So next is a psychological split within the chart. So let me explain this. You guys know I have 2 masters in psychology. So this is a very, very important one, especially I teach Astrology 101 if anyone's interested, get in contact with me. But when you bring these 2 worlds together, right, you see that a lot of people, like myself, for example, will have 2 or more, but like we try to it's kind of family systems, internal family systems in psychology, where you have different parts. You might have I might have my Pisces part and my Sag, Leo, Aquarius part, right? And a lot of people will have that. Like, I can think of someone who has a lot of energy in Aries, and then a lot of energy in Pisces. And it's kind of like a fight, or why I say Aries, I meant Leo. It's kind of a fight because on one side, there's this like very, this very, very emotional, spiritual person, but that's the moon, Pisces, and the ascendant and the sun are Leo. So it's like she is constantly like looked at as being like the super out there, social, blah, blah, blah type person. But then guess what? When you get to know her, she needs a lot of space, and then there's planets in Aquarius, right? So it's like she needs a lot of space. She she isn't what you think she would be. And that can be really difficult because what you're dealing with there is different past life personas in this one lifetime that we if you don't believe this, I mean, just feel into it for a while. Like, we definitely are not, do you feel how you are a different person around, let's say, this person, this group, this person, whether it's family, friends, in a relationship, whatever? That's a different past life personality. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff going on here, right? But like, one of them is like, that's a different past life part of you, right? Version of you that lived with that person. And yeah. So with the splits, when you're someone who has that in your chart, which, like I said, a lot of people do, there's a contradiction between these two parts. And it's like, how do I feed both mouths? How, if I have, like in my example, the Leo wants to go out and have fun, the Pisces wants to meditate and stay and be more introverted. But like, if you go too far in the Pisces part, you're not gonna, the Leo part's not gonna be happy. The Leo part likes to socialize, likes to be creative, likes to have fun, likes to laugh and smile, and it's more extroverted. But then if you're too far in the Leo part, the Pisces parts can get overwhelmed, right? Pisces moons, we know, like, they're like sponges for energy. They take in all the energy around them. So this can be shown in a million type of ways. Not everyone has a chart like this. Some people have charts that are more balanced, right? In the sense that they might have every element present, or they might just not have, it might be like, Taurus sun, or Taurus moon, Capricorn sun, and like Cancer rising or something like that. Something like signs that go really well together, which can bring up like other issues of misbalance of elements, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about how do you deal with it when you have almost two split personality. Like, when you have, like, guys, look, I'm a Pisces sun, Sag moon. Like, I live this. I've lived this my whole life, right? Of having the, being more an introvert, but also someone who loves being around people when I'm in like a social introvert, right? So I really feel when I'm alone, and other people feel this way too, that a certain side of me comes out, right? And that's also really, really important for me as a thinker, for me as an astrologer, right? This is just an example. But then when I'm around people, there's a whole different side of me that comes out. I'm laughing a lot. I love to laugh. I need to laugh. I need to see the world, to see different countries, to you know what I mean? Like, I need to experience. I need to have experience. I can't, even with what I'm doing with my astrology, I can't really do it well if I'm just sitting in my apartment nonstop. So yeah, curious let me know in the comments who has something like that. Yeah. Okay. Next. So next, let's just say, like, a lot of retrogrades. Now, what I mean more by this is, especially like when it's like Mercury, Mars, Venus, like Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. I mean, I'm not saying they don't matter, but they are a retrograde nearly half the time. And there's less of a psychological effect. But still, you can look at a chart, and like a chart like I can look at one chart. There's one retrograde planet, it's Pluto. I'm like, that's not a retrograde chart. That's a direct chart. That person will have like an easier time. Normally, obviously, you have to really think about the aspects, which I'll talk about hard aspects, obviously soon. Well, I already talked about Moon and Pluto, but yeah, like basically, then you see someone. Okay, they have Saturn retrograde, they have Jupiter retrograde, they have Mercury retrograde. And you're like, all right, maybe they have like Neptune, Uranus, Pluto also, but whatever. That person, it's going to take them a lot longer to figure things out, right? It's way more of a perfectionism, like kind of past lives, they didn't get something right about the archetype of that planet. And they're meant to be more analytical around that planet. So a lot of times people who have very retrograde charts, their lives won't get going till, post in their 30s or something. It's going to take them a lot longer, and it can lead to a lot of frustration. There can be a lot of overthinking. There can be a lot of, obsession or just a feeling of stuckness, right? But that is because in past lives, like you are, like, it's not a bad thing. And that's what's really important to know about retrograde people, whatever you have, right, is that it's just going to take longer for you to perfect it. But like what's it called? The direct person, they might turn in their project, their metaphorical project, school metaphor, at 25, and they did good. They got like an A- or a B+. And then the retrograde person might turn theirs in, and it might be like a D, right? Bear with me. But it's a D because they just went for it too much. And the teacher's like, no, go home. Like, I see what you're doing. Go home, redo it. They go home, they redo it, and they bring it back, and it's like an A++++, because they got into the details. Like, they really, really learned the lessons around whatever is being taught here. So yes, there's an internal element, and it's karmic because it's based on getting something right that maybe was wrong from past lives. Kaping, kaping, kapang. Okay, so when we talk about the nodes, so I mean, there's so many different places I could go here. There's not just one nodal placement by house, by sign, that's like the most karmic. But I guess what we could say is, if you have a 12th house south node, 6th house north node, or just you're on that 12th, 6th axis, or Pisces, Virgo, or, Taurus, south node, Scorpio, Taurus, or it could go either way, right? So I feel like those two are very, very, very karmic. They're all karmic, but like, if you think about a Pisces north node, right? Or excuse me, a Virgo north node. This is someone who oftentimes has the mystical past life energy, but they, I've seen this in action a lot, where they don't trust themselves often, in the sense that they can be delusional. Like I've literally seen it. thinking that God's just going to reward them for everything without their hard work. And they can be the people that gave up on their dreams very easily, and they're not living in reality, which I'm not saying you're supposed to live so much in reality. So these people can give up on themselves way too easily. And they can fall victim to addiction. They can fall victim to living an like just a complete, just super, like literally delusional, like where they have tricked themselves into believing that their reality, that they're actually going in the right direction, when it is like, I know someone who it's like it's an extreme how off this person is, right? Pisces South Node. It's sad. And this person still thinks that they're, you know, like I don't know them like close like that, but like they still think that they're headed in the right direction. You know, it's like this incredible ability to lie to oneself, right? Now, I'm not saying every Pisces South Node is like that. I think we'll break this up into two different. One sec, guys. So it's not like everyone is like that, right? But I've seen it enough to where it's like, damn, you know, it's like, wow. And learning to be practical, learning to create a system for yourself, learning to know that I need to like be healthy. I need to take things step by step. You know, I could have the best idea for a movie or for something creative, but if I'm just, you know, having zero boundaries, that's a big thing with the Pisces South Node. Like they can be some of the most talented, mystical, spiritual, even like as an astrologer, I see a lot of them, right? But then they have no boundaries with people. So that like, you know, they could be very knowledgeable, very wise, and then they could have like a friend who's like, hey, come out with me, come do drugs, come do this, come do that. And they're like, okay, I'll go. And then boom, before they know it, they're just frying themselves, you know? So obviously this is an extreme, but there's a real lack. So where does that lack of boundary come from, right? Where does that lack of being able to enforce your boundaries come from? Well, that's self-esteem, self-worth. If you don't think that you're worth shit, like, you know, you're gonna let people step all over you. So being able to create routines, right, is so important. So it's so karmic because a lot of people with this are stuck in that loop of like the extremely talented and wise and empathetic and all these great qualities. Don't get me wrong. Pure, like a lot of them are very pure, but they can also be very deceptive. They can also be liars, compulsive liars. They can be people who are afraid of conflict, so they just choose to lie about everything, about their whole identity, their whole life, because it's a projection of what they're doing. They're running away from their lies. So practical. And this isn't a North Node video, but people with that, they'll keep reincarnating similar circumstances until they can say, you know what? I'm going to go to the effing gym. You know what? I'm going to cut this person off. You know what? I'm going to go work this. Even if this job is shitty, I'm going to go do it. I'm not going to, you know what? I'm not going to be victim. I'm not going to just like be victim to the world. Like, I'm not going to just be victim to like my circumstances or whatever, you know, even if there are things that are not fair, right? I'm going to take things in my own hands, and then you get rewarded. Now, the other way with, you know, with the other direction, right? Which is Pisces to Virgo, or excuse me, Virgo to Pisces. This is very spiritually too, because here you're learning. You've had lifetimes where you were too in the material realm. You know, you've had lifetimes where your rigid view of reality got in the way of you seeing the big picture of God and the beauty of everything being connected. So it's like you almost have to take from that like delusional person who's not wrong. They're not completely wrong. It's just that God wants them to like get their shit together a bit. Like God's like, okay, like God loves everyone, but like, God's like, all right, like you get it, but come on, get to work a bit. The South Node Virgo person is a spiritual crisis, often, right? Where they have past life anxiety, and they are very in the mental, and they're trying to, while the Pisces South Node person is trying to get more into the mercurial day by day, making lists, like all that. This person is trying to, they're trying to learn to stop their mind. They're trying to learn to, whether it's by being of service, whether it's by learning about spirituality, it's like they're trying. Their mind can create this reality that's so rigid and so boxed in and black and white, where they're so logical. They're so logical. A lot of Pisces North nodes and South nodes and Virgos, that they just are unable to experience God. They can only, because like they can't logically make sense of it, and they just go in circles of indecision, and it can be very self-destructive, right? Yeah. So like that over analysis is the over analysis is the murder of joy, or something like that, right? And it's just true. It's like they need to be able to, like, karmically, like, they're people who probably have suffered a lot, because how much do you suffer on a karmic level when you are atheist, or when you are separated from the magic of life? And I'm not here acting like I'm always like Mr. Rainbow Magic all the time. No. But like, people with Pisces North nodes, they'll have experiences, right? And they'll have this like, they'll have these experiences, this cognitive dissonance, where it's like, there's no way that that's not God, but they'll still struggle to see it. They'll still struggle to allow themselves to believe it. So they're here to embrace spirituality. They're here to embrace listening to their intuition, to their Neptune, to the collective unconscious, right? To not be so in their head and fragmented and separated, like, in their little island of reality, to have that unconditional acceptance for themselves that then leaks out to other people. But it's a hard one, because it's not easy. They maybe, based on their charts, I have to look at their charts, they maybe were lied to a lot in past lives about God, made to believe that that, or like spirituality, God, or whatever, and it had dire consequences. So they're like, logic and everything that has to be proven is better. And part of that, like, perfectionist, critical attitude, it's just like, when you're so critical, and you're just thinking of like, of this little thing, you're not able to just dream. Your consciousness isn't able to rise, because you're do. And when you're do, you're not able to, you're not able to grasp you're not able to feel, to allow the downloads in. But you're almost blocking, you're creating a wall for the magic to enter you on a spiritual level. And that whole idea of chaos and spontaneity, is scary, right? It's like that control, that need for order, that need for control. And so learn, like, these are people who need to learn, like, the soul is here to learn to trust the intuition. So yeah. So yeah, I was on that note. So then, with like the whole Taurus, Scorpio, 2nd, 8th, South Node, North Node, it's different. I'll speak a little bit more briefly on that one. I think that, when you have that, you just need to understand that, especially like South Node in Scorpio, North Node in Taurus, like you're here, you likely are in this incarnation trying to find peace, trying to not have to have drama all the time, trying to just chill the F out, you know? But like sometimes people can be addicted to drama. People can be addicted to like stirring the waters. And when the waters get calm, based on their own past life trauma, they freak out. Now, it's really about being firm in yourself and being able to depend on yourself, right? Now, it's a little bit different. This one's more psychological, but it's very karmic, yeah, because like imagine you're coming from a past life where you're tortured, and then this life it's like you just have trust issues, you know, and you have a childhood that kind of mimics that, but then you're here to learn how to just sit with yourself and have nice relationships and be in the present, not be like so traumatized, you know, to overcome the trauma. It's a tough one, right? Because there's like comfort, Taurus, crisis, Scorpio. So yeah, I think learning to trust others is a huge part of this. And, you know, with a Scorpio North Node, a lot of times South Node and Taurus, like, you know, they need to learn how to accept change and to accept learning how to let go. This is kind of Virgo to Pisces also, like any earth to water, it's like learning to accept just surrender, right? Or accepting surrender. So, yeah. I think also, yeah, so trust is a big one. Vulnerability. And yeah, just like letting go of what you might what might be that comfort zone cocoon that doesn't serve you anymore. A lot more I could say, but yeah, like that one's tough and karmic because it's like you're trying to leave something, and people do. It is a lot easier said than done. Because like if things are all calm, you might be thinking like, okay, well, this is weird. There's a lot of anxiety until you do that healing. Like the other direction, hold on. Taurus to Scorpio. I guess I kind of mix these two together, but whatever. You know, there is this need to let go with this one, right? This person, you know, people who have this, like, it's another one that kind of like where I totally mix these two together. Whatever. We can just go with this axis. With damn, I'm confused. Did I just totally do this wrong? I guess regardless of how you look at this, there's this need. So yeah, with North Node and Taurus, like there's that need to kind of find that value within, right? And kind of not need to crave the validation. Well, I guess I've been talking about North Node and Taurus. So North Node and Scorpio, I guess. South Node and Taurus. That is about accepting change, you know, and going into deep spiritual work and lifetimes where things were very, very chill and everything was all good, and then suddenly you're thrown in this like really that's the hardest one, right? It's probably most people would say is North Node in Scorpio or in the 8th house, because it's like the soul is used to things being calm, and suddenly it's the opposite of that, right? It's the opposite of that, and a lot of people with that, they really just think that they think that, or they come in this life very things are very stable, things are very good, things are very chill, they're used to being in the present, they're used to that calm life. But then when you're so attached, you have so many attachments, you're spiritually, there's different chapters in the soul's evolution. So unfortunately, like crises and different things that can happen that can appear negative push people with this into learning more about themselves on a soul level. And it can happen in a lot of different types of ways. A lot of times Taurus South nodes are very, very dependent on themselves, right? And they kind of can have this like, stubborn attitude. I can do it all on my own. I don't need to think a different way, right? What works for me works for me. Who the people around me are people around me. And there's this idea of Scorpio, which is coming together, right? But really, like, the karma here is that if you're just always playing it on safe mode, how do you gain anything? I mean, look at every spiritual person or healer or anything like that I've ever come across. They have something in their story that is either traumatic or very, very difficult that kind of made them who they are. So, like, people like with the South Node and Taurus, they might be like very attracted to wealth and to worldly possessions and things that are more in the material realm, while the North Node Scorpio is like finding strength in yourself and going into the unseen parts of reality. So, and also that the part of that is like intimate soul bending relationships, right? So learning to trust is a big part of that. But I think on a psychological, spiritual level, it's kind of like going into the darkness. It's like the karma of that. All right. So I guess I could say so having like a heavy Capricorn or Saturn emphasis. So this could show up in a lot of different ways. But overall, whether it's like a Capricorn moon or like Saturn square the sun or Saturn on the moon or Saturn on the Venus or Saturn, whatever, right? Like a lot of Capricorn planets, just Saturn, what it does is that it slows things down until around 30. Around the Saturn return, around 29, 30, 31, like life will start to make more sense. But before then, it can be very, very difficult, very, very restrictive. And there's a certain karma associated with that because, Saturn literally is the planet of karma. So it can show up in different ways, such as, very strict traditional parents or growing up in a system that pushed you away from being your authentic self. And on a soul level, the lessons of patience and kind of never giving up that Saturn brings, are people tend to look back and be grateful, for them, right? But they can be really frustrating during that start of life. So it can feel like the person's like carrying a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility, like they had to grow up really young, not by choice, but by karmic necessity. And it's like through that endurance, through that just time, it's Chronos, it rules time, and that discipline that they have to learn, and a lot of times there's a pain and sometimes a loneliness associated with it. That's where the person grows, and the karmic lessons that karmic gains that come from that are abundant, and they tend to really feel those later in life after the return often, right? But they become integral parts of society, and very, very authoritative and important people who, understand that, like, people can be like, oh, they're too serious sometimes, but it's like there's people like they mature faster, they mature faster, and they're people that people turn on them, not turn on them, people turn to them when it is, when they need someone that they can really rely on, right? So it's kind of like Scorpio, Pluto, like where it's like what I was saying at the start, where it's like if you can make it past that childhood and kind of 20s, like the first part of life, things get a lot better, and then it ends up being a good thing. But yeah, very tough. That feeling of like I have to earn everything the hard way. Like I walk forward, I get pushed back, and I walk forward, I get pushed back, but then it stops and it gets easier. A lot of different placements, like whether it's Venus, IC, Sun, Moon, whatever, like aspects, there can be this idea of self-worth, being based on how, not conditional. Like, so it's like the person whose parents love them based on how good they do at school or sports, right? And that really can be painful. So it can, it can be someone who like has to parent themselves or parent their parents, right? And can feel very kind of black sheepy. So, yeah. And never give up. Like for people who are Saturnians, it's like, there's that late bloomer energy. So, it's just about kind of keeping it going. And yes, there is a certain pessimism that can come, that can be kind of like a stereotype of Saturnians, but everything is about like, especially Capricorn Moon, it's about going within, liquefying, like being vulnerable, talking about vulnerabilities, opening up, and that's like the magic pill for especially Capricorn Moons, but people who have this type of heaviness or this emphasis in their chart. And yeah, just also like that, they tend to be very hard on themselves also. So, yeah. Um, I guess, yeah, I guess I would say too, I already talked about it, but that was just like with one aspect. Having like just like a heavy Scorpio. Hold on. Having like a heavy Scorpio slash Pluto emphasis, right? That's very big also, and that could be, like I said before, that could be having your moon with Pluto. That could be having moon square, conjunct, opposite, quincunx, whatever. That could be having a lot of 8th house planets. That could be having Pluto on the IC. Pluto in hard aspect to any planets, really, right? Venus, Sun, Mars. Lots of, Scorpio stellium, lots of planets there. I mean, this just creates someone who's very, very deep, right? I said a lot of this already, but they often have some type of crisis that they had to overcome in this life, and they're not here to just live the typical life. They're here to transform. They're here to go through many different lifetimes within this one lifetime. So sometimes they have to create very strong boundaries with people around them that maybe they grew up with, who don't share that same growth mindset, or I guess that same trajectory. Now, very Scorpionic people, very Plutonian people have to really, they have a different path, because they really have to embrace that darkness. They have to embrace that part of themselves that society might kind of push them to overlook, but they don't really have that choice. For them, it's like, either deal with it or have it kind of show up in the unconscious way stronger. So transformation is everything, right? And I think that people with this cannot stand the surface level BS, the stuff in life that's very surface level. Like, they want to get beneath the surface, and sometimes that can be a little bit tough too. But they're also, they're natural psychologists. They're people who can just, like, they're very psychic, very, very intuitive, very good at just looking at people and situations and strategizing their life. So, like with most Scorpio heavy people, like, there's some type of trauma that starts in life. Like I said this when I started, right? With the Pluto moon, whether it's betrayal, abandonment, anything, right? And it's almost like there's a difference between growing and transforming, right? It's like that's actually like a good lingo. Not everyone, but a lot of people grow, but not everyone transforms. So, it's like I've said it for years, that these types of people can look at themselves at different eras in their life and not even recognize themselves, because there's such of a drastic change, where you're like, wow, that's an actor and actress that was playing me. So, yeah. I find that with Scorpio people, it's really, really difficult to repress what, like, society might find taboo. It rules the taboo, the 8th house, right? So there is this very deep confrontation with one's own fears, with parts of oneself that one might not, that someone else might be better at not going into. A Scorpio, it's about that rawness of going into everything, right? So that's very karmic too, because it's like you're going to have that confrontation. So what makes something karmic is that there's that fate of having this much Scorpio energy. It reveals that you're going to have something that's going to push you into that death, rebirth, transformation that usually isn't something that's so nice, right? It doesn't always have to be some mega trauma. It could be micro traumas. It could be, it could be completely psychological, where you're dealing with something internally from past lives. But really, the whole idea is that Scorpionic people are bringing a lot of past life darkness into this life so that they can free themselves from that burden. And like these people, they feel everything, they take everything in, and they can be very, very misunderstood as being like, because they can be quite headstrong. Yeah. So last thing I'll say, maybe last thing. So any hard aspects, squares to the nodes. Those are very, if you have it like your node is 17 Leo and you have your Pluto at 17 Scorpio, like that would be like, your Pluto square the nodes. And, any planet square your nodes, I'm not going to go into all of them, but they represent skip karmic steps, or any planets that are involved with the nodes. Even if, like, for example, you have like a a planet that is on your north node. That means it's opposite the south node, right? And especially the squares, right? You have to really like look into like how that planet is in your chart, the ruler, the aspects, and really imagine how that plays into the nodal theme. That's like one of the big things I do in readings. And if anyone wants to book a reading, let me know, or go on my website jesseinnesonastrology.com and just book direct, and then I'll get in contact with you, or message me on Instagram, jesseinnesonastrology. But yeah, like it's just very interesting how I'm able to really find the parallels and kind of like see how this part works with this part, and then this part, and then this part, and then the ruler of this is, you know, conjunct this, and this is, yeah. So there's just a million different themes that kind of tell a story, and it's different from person to person. But like for example, for me, having Pluto square my nodes, I never knew I never knew why I was showing, like when I was younger, like I was showing so much trauma, but I didn't really have any big trauma in my life. And then I realized, like, damn, that's me having like Pluto on the IC square Venus, which is conjunct my north node, and square the nodes, right? So that was like made so much sense. It was like a game changer. I was like, damn, well, I have past life trauma, right? You know, this is what I'm dealing with, past life trauma. So there's tons of different variations of that. So yeah, I'll finish with this actually. So one of the 6 astrological axes, like Sag, Gem, Leo, Aquarius, highlighted. So why I say this is because you'll see charts that have like, you know, so just to go through them: Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sag, Cancer, Capricorn, Leo, Aquarius, Virgo, Pisces, right? And you'll see people who have like a bunch of their chart in opposite signs. And that's a surefire signal that you are really meant to learn about those archetypes. You know, you're really, really meant to kind of understand what it means to balance those out, right? I already gave the examples. You know, I think I went pretty far into like the Pisces Virgo example, right? Where it's like, okay, well, I need to learn the balance between Neptune and Mercury, right? Between living in this world, but also not giving up on my dreams, for example. Kind of a form of like grounded spirituality without being too realistic where I give up on my dreams, but also not being too delusional where I yeah. So there's like, that is definitely a big one. You know, also things like lunar cycles, like being born on like a full moon, for example, very karmic. Planets rising, like Saturn, Chiron, you know, planets like that on your ascendant. And then you can go super far into like having like a 5th house Saturn for where like I could do a whole video on like Saturn, where like how, you know, the planet of karma, like how by house it just says so much, right? It does so much. Chiron in certain signs, like obviously like Chiron in like Aries or Leo, right? You know, even Saturn in Pisces is a big one. In the 12th house, I already went into the 12th house, but like Saturn in the 5th house, Chiron in Gemini, I see a lot, you know, with you know, someone who has like an interesting Mercury, very Uranian placements. Chiron in Cancer, you know, like just there's so much. So yeah, anyways, I'll end it there. So if anyone is looking to get astrology one-on-one classes at any level, this is like a class that's made for you. Like, we talk, we figure it out. I have them in 10, 20, and 50 class. They're very, very affordable compared to, you know, what you would get from other astrologers who are going to charge you way more. It's going to be a class environment. This is one-on-one only. And then, yeah, let me know if anyone wants to book a live natal chart reading or a recorded natal chart reading with or without follow-up. Astrocartography, I've just been doing relocation astrology where I can tell you what neighborhood or what parts of your own city or any city are best for you. If you're thinking about moving somewhere, I can like literally tell you like move to this area because of this reason, like avoid this one. Compatibility, it goes on and on and on. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll talk to y'all later. Ciao.